Well, the U.S. Secretary of State is on an African visit. Let's get more now on that. And I'm joined here in studio by the Chief Executive Officer of Rich Management, based here in Nairobi, Mr. Aly Khan Satchu. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Now, the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, has arrived in Africa a few days before Premier Lee, China's Premier Lee, arrives in Africa. Is this a coincidence?
Well, I think, we're in a much more competitive relationship between China and the U.S. That was seen when President Obama visited Asia recently, and I think the China Daily described President Obama's visit as a wish to cage China. So we have a much more adversarial approach. I think you have to, it is informed by that, but specifically in this instance, I think John Kerry is coming for two things. One is to try and pull South Sudan out of the fire. The independence of South Sudan was largely incubated in the US. This was a US project. They've got to try and retrieve something out of it. And secondly, there is a summit that President Obama is going to be holding later in the year with the African presidents, and probably coming to do some preparation work for that as well. So near term, those are the things I think he's focused on. All
right. Well, African leaders will be in Washington later this year, of course, for that meeting, as you mentioned there. But clearly, China has made massive headways here in Africa. How much catch-up does the U.S. have to play?
You see, I think China has made huge headway in terms of the commercial relationship. You can see that in the trade flows. You can see that in the investment. Walk around anywhere in Africa, the roads you're driving on, the infrastructure you're using is quite likely to be Chinese. The US has a big advantage, however, in Africa, and that's the military advantage, US AFRICOM, the military presence. And I think the US is going to be keener to be more aggressive in the way they use that. So playing catch up definitely in commerce, way behind the curve, but ahead of the curve when it comes to hard power. Probably feeling whether it's in Asia or Africa that this advantage is going to erode over time. The nature of advantages as you start to try and press them. I sense that this whole weak President Obama story is really a canard, and they are pressing their advantage, whether it's on China's borders or in Africa.
How much effort, though, is the U.S. really putting in reassessing or refocusing its efforts on the continent?
Well, I think they're trying to refocus it. They're trying to recalibrate it in the context of budget issues in the U.S. The U.S. has its own financial issues. It's only now emerging out of a recession. They can't throw the same amount of money that China can throw at Africa. So they're trying to differentiate their messages. And interestingly, both sides were differentiating the message. The Chinese premier's press release was talking about improving the livelihood, creating a more sustainable economy, vocabulary changing, linguistics changing. Kerry also trying to recalibrate the U.S. Voice on the continent.
Well, they do have different strategies in terms of their foreign policies in Africa, but the U.S. has been talking about strengthening democracy for the last 10, 20 years. Well, how much impact, though, has that had, really, on the continent?
I don't know. I think there's a gulf between the U.S. rhetoric about democracy and actually the facts on the ground. Let's take Egypt as an example. That's not a democratic situation, but the U.S. has come forward and recently delivered Apache helicopters. The U.S.'s predominant interest is its economic interest, and it's there to protect its economic interest, and at times it veils this stuff with this democratic talk. At the end of the day, they want to deal with a single postbox. So I think, the language, the rhetoric has to be taken with a pinch of salt at times.
All right, Aly Khan Satchu, we'll leave it there for the moment, but thank you very much for being on Africa Live.